to the December 14th Eclipse OpenJ9 community call. We're giving this a second try given the sound issues that we were having previously. As always, please add your name and affiliation to the list of attendees just so we know who's been joining. We don't have a lightning talk this week, but if you'd like to give one, it'll probably be in the new year. Please reach out to me and we'll get something scheduled in there. We take a quick look at the recent end user issues. I only see one that's been opened in the last week, and it looks like there's some discussion happening there, so that's probably under control. Is there anything in this list that needs to be taken a look at? Jump back to the agenda. I think in the interest of time, we'll skip over taking a look at the download trends. And that brings us to our roadmaps. So the 0.29.1 release, the release has been tagged and completed from an OpenJ9 point of view. And as far as I know, the Semaru builds are available. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. I should have updated that. They were made available last Thursday.
Excellent.
And I think I saw something about the Docker images being ready today.
That's great news. That brings us then to the 0.30 release, the next quarterly release of 8, 11, and 17. Take a look at the milestone. We have 36 open items still.
Yeah, so I did put a summary in the issue in the minutes. It's slightly out of date, but pretty close. Seems a lot of JIT issues were moved out and some things were closed. So this is our current status. 2 blockers, although the second one, 14.115, is open for discussion. I mean, it's a new test, which seems to have exposed the new issue, but it is failing pretty regularly on ARH64, which is why I set it as a blocker.
Do we think, let me open that up for a minute. Looking at a regular seg fault, do we know which component it like? Okay, so the JIT's going to take a look at the superclass angle on this. Daryl, is there an update on that? I don't actually see Daryl on the call. Okay. I have to follow up with the JIT team then.
So I think we could make a call later whether it's really a blocker. I don't know that it really needs to block the release. It's just blocking us from being green. So it would be nice to fix it if we can't get it fixed in time. Considering it's a new test and we may have had this problem for quite some time, I'm not sure it needs to block the release.
Does that issue apply more broadly than 17? Does it also affect 8 and 11?
Yes. I assume it's failing on 17, but the new test isn't running on 17, so it actually only fails on 8 and 11 right now.
Okay, so given the state that we're in then with this 37 open items still, it looks like we are proceeding with the M2.
Yes, so I tagged it yesterday and the builds have started. Seems like next week wasn't a good week to do an M2 because Adam may not have enough availability to get the builds happening. We could consider, depending on how many more changes go in, we could consider an M3 in early January if we have time.
Yeah, given the point at where we're at, though, it may be, as we come up on the holiday season, we may not, sorry, I'm saying this poorly. the 37 items that we do have open, do we
I
have people
suspect a
who's
lot of
going?
those are going to move out, right? We're
Yeah.
not going to be fixing too much more stuff for this release. Um, but if we do have some fixes, then we probably want to have an M3 just to run another round of testing to make sure things are still good before we get to the final release point. So I think we play it by ear and we see how many more things are going to be low enough risk to go in after this point, and see about another build in early January.
Yeah, sounds reasonable.
I mean, there's a lot of vacations coming up. I don't know that there's going to be too many people around next week.
Do we think it's always required to do all 3 versions for milestones, or is there? I guess it might depend on what goes into it. Might get away with just building one of them, or
We want to see that testing and make sure that the testing is in good shape coming up to the GA, because we don't want to have any surprises when we hit GA of a problem that was introduced that we didn't see, as then that would delay the GA.
okay. I'm thinking like if there was like a change that went in after M2 that was specific to like 17 or something, maybe we could get away with just an M3 on 17.
Yeah, that's a possibility, but often they apply to everything.
Okay.
So we'll have to see what they are, what the changes are. I see Daryl has joined the call now.
So Daryl, we have been talking about potential blocker 14.11.5, the seg faults running the command line tester tests, and it was likely that this is that there's a JIT angle related to the get superclass change. Just wondering, do you see this as a thing that could be fixed before the actual release in January 18th?
If the fix is just to disable that specialization when involuntary OSR is enabled, like we did for the other one, that's a pretty straightforward fix. We're just collecting some information, or just getting some confirmation that this is actually the problem that we're seeing here. It seems like, given our experience with the clone behavior, that this is likely the problem, but we're just getting confirmation on that. So if we're going to fix this, it should be a relatively straightforward fix, and it should arrive in the next day.
All right, that would be good. Yeah, that would address the blocker for the release. We didn't actually look at the other blocker.
Slower progress on that one. It's getting an incorrect value that's causing an exception to be thrown. This one is fairly reproducible and occurs in a relatively default mode. It's an X compressed oops mode, so that's the only option, which is, I think, sort of default already. So it probably is important to get this one fixed. Annabelle and Devin are looking at it. Nothing new to report today on it, but they're continuing to try to get to the bottom of it.
It also seems to be a regression. We didn't see this one earlier, and it popped up in the head stream.
Okay, so we'll have to keep an eye on this one and use on these two issues and see how they progress before we can do that release. Is there anything else on 030 we need to discuss? Then 031, the Java 18 release is also coming up.
So OpenJDK split, and we need to do a split as well. So we're frozen at the moment at the split point, or just before the split point. Once we can get a JDK 18 repo created, then we can mirror the latest changes for 18 and next in the corresponding repos. Meanwhile, there's still all the Sanity OpenJDK test failures, so we excluded a bunch. I saw a fix go in that fixed a couple of them, but we still have like 10 failures across the different platforms that we need to deal with. Take a look at, maybe exclude them, make sure issues are graded for them.
Do we know when do we expect the JDK 18 repo to be available?
Adam said he'd take a look. I don't know if he has any more comments on that.
Sorry, lost my window. Hopefully today. Assuming we don't have any issues. It sounds like it should be an easy thing to do this time around.
It's good to hear. Making progress on that release as well. There is a lot of items in there. I realize that not all of these will have to be addressed for the release, but we should be trying to burn this list down as well.
Yeah, I wonder if we should separate the stuff that we need for Java 18 from the stuff that we've just been moving forward. So I think there's quite a few 18 specific issues, and we're going to have to make a call if we can ship this thing on time or not.
Yeah, do you have a suggestion on how is that, moving things out of this plan already preemptively, or do you have a tag that you want to use for the 18 specific issues?
I think a lot of them are tagged with JDK 18. We could try to make sure that they're tagged with 18 when they're important to getting 18 out the door.
Okay, that seems reasonable. So, a fair number of these things. So, people do have extra cycles or are looking for something to do over their holidays and want to pick up some of those JDK 18 issues. That would be a great place to start.
I don't know, did we mention the builds for 030? The Milestone 2 builds are running this week, so 8 ran yesterday, 11 was started last night, but it's not completed yet, and we'll do 17 once 11 is finished, maybe tomorrow.
Yeah, I think we had mentioned that they'd be available at the end of this week, hopefully.
Yeah.
Jump down to our general business update. You have somebody from Adopt who can give us an update? Skip over that. Adam, is there an update on the infrastructure?
Yeah, not too much to update. The Artifactory usage seems to be stabilized at 90. The AX machines are being set up. Joe has one of them ready to go, so we're just waiting on access to the HMC for the host to be able to clone it out ourselves, rather than relying on someone else to do it for us. And we also have a 7.2 system that we're going to set up as well. So it's looking better now, but we did email the IBM Garage people, CECC, to get an extension, and they agreed to the end of January. So that's good too. A little bit of buffer.
Yeah, that's great to hear.
I did notice this morning that there's a number of machines offline in Jenkins. It didn't seem to be a problem for the builds last night, but there's 4 machines offline that I don't think should be offline, and then a Mac machine that's been offline for weeks.
Number 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was trying to find that issue again this morning to take a look at it.
14048.
Okay.
I created a new issue, 14147, because there's 4 other machines that are offline.
Okay. Thanks.
Then we'll move to the Cmake migration. Devin, any update there?
Nothing much new. I opened up a new PR for cross-compile support stuff. The only thing is I'm not aware of any builds we're running anywhere that are doing cross-compiles to double-check my work. So I just wanted to check if anyone knew of any cross builds that we are running in CI somewhere.
The wouldn't the RISC-V build be cross-compile?
I didn't see any actual RISC-V builds anywhere. Well, there was a couple, but they haven't run in ages.
And then for AArch64, you can do a cross-compile build, but that's not how we're doing it in CI. I think people were doing those in other locations, like as personal builds. They were doing cross-compile builds because they didn't have the hardware or fast hardware.
How do you make it do a cross build on for AArch?
I have no idea. We could ask Kono-san how that's done.
Okay.
Marius, is there an update on JIT server?
Nothing new to report. So ART server caching is in 0.30, and I'm currently investigating its performance.
Looks like the next microJIT meeting is tentatively December 16th.
Yeah, put this on.
Toby, is there an update on the snapshot restore work?
Yeah, so the new changes went in last week, enabling users to add their own hooks. Next up, we're going to start looking at addressing some of the use cases, such as random instances and timer instances. For these particular types, these are cases where there will need to be some kind of intervention from the JDK such that these instances make sense in the new restore environment. So this will be the focus of the next set of changes.
Jack, do we have an update on Project Loom?
Yeah, so Jason have been working on reusing the OpenJDK Java thread, which I believe he was able to get it working on 17 and 18, and having a pass screen on functional sanity. I am rebasing my work on top of his changes and starting to work on the different native APIs related to Java continuation. I'm still investigating in terms of how to properly run it in the continuation frame, where we have to put the thread stack on top of the native one.
Thanks, Jack. Cheng, is there an update on Panama?
Actually, I already finished updating our codes on phase 2, 3, and 4. So in terms of down call, yes, I already verified and persevered which works good. I'll get started waiting for vacation this Thursday. I'll get back to keep updating the code in AppCo next January. And that's
Thanks,
everything I'm saying. Yeah.
Skip over the monitoring strategy again. I think it's something we do need to tackle at some point, but it's not critical today. Is there an update on the M1 work?
Yep, so the JIT is mostly working. So we have a good number of things running now on Mac M1. We're still unable to do a build with the Mac M1 VM that we have because we have a failure that occurs during the build step when we're building the class library, so we need to get to the bottom of that. The other, so we're in a position now where we can test with the large heap. We can start running more and more tests with that, so we'll start to do that very soon. Compressed references is still a bit elusive at this point. We did have a discussion with a number of folks from the VM team last week where we discussed some of the technical options for getting compressed references to work. The sort of leading potential solution for this is to go to some kind of a heap offset approach. This is one of the things that we had explored many years ago when we were first doing compressed references. I mean, a lot of the support is still there, but we really need to understand the performance implications of that approach to see. So we're still just digesting the output of that meeting and looking at what we can do for a heap-based solution going forward on AH64. So we haven't started any of those experimentation just yet.
Thanks, Daryl. The next item we have here, Peter or Mark?
Sorry, Dan, can I just say one more thing?
Sure.
One thing that we're looking at right now is perhaps doing an early access release of Mac M1 for JDK 18. We probably wouldn't be production release until we have compressed references support, but it may be good enough by JDK 18 for us to do an early access release on M1, or people can pick up and do functional testing or development or whatever they want with it.
Just sliding back up to look at our release dates for that. We're talking about branching towards the end of January for that.
Yeah.
Is that a reasonable time frame for having an early release build?
At this point, from a technical point of view, at this point that seems reasonable. We have to obviously get the code all landed, and we have to run some of the tests or all the tests. But until we run all of the tests, we won't necessarily know how many problems there are. But things are looking pretty good right now. So at this point, JDK 18 is a target for early access, but obviously I'll update more based on our progress into January, whether or not that's going to be realistic or not.
Daryl. Then that brings us to our last item. Peter or Mark, do one of you want to take this one?
Sure. I'll say a few words around it. So I guess this, primarily arose out of the release delays that came with Java 17, which are kind of an outlier for how the project's been managing to deliver new JDK releases, or any kind of JDK, any of our releases really, and trying to find a way that we can more reliably interact with stakeholders and our downstream consumers. So, and I guess I have two hats when I say our in that sentence, so let me clarify that. So both downstream of OpenJ9, which the most direct downstream consumer is IBM to build the similar runtimes. But then wearing my IBM hat, we have lots of stakeholders who come to IBM asking both internally and externally when the builds are going to be available. And so I guess the question would be is whether at OpenJ9, if it would be useful for us to kind of draw a line in the sand for our releases going forward to say that we're we're going to take a harder line on, shipping a release within a certain time frame after the OpenJDK release, since all our releases are really tied to OpenJDK release timelines. If we could say something like 2 weeks, I think is the number that Peter put in the put here. If we could have OpenJ9 commit to doing a release within 2 weeks of the OpenJDK release, that would certainly help with managing the communication with all of our stakeholders, and also might provide a level of priority for the project itself in terms of driving decisions around whether we how we manage the content of releases going forward. So anyway, so it was a suggestion that we wanted to bring the community and have a discussion around. Peter, did you want to add anything to that?
No, I think we could, well, maybe I will. Yeah, I think we have a document already, the release process document. We could put in a typical commitment, but then when we get close to a release like Java 18, we need to have a discussion about whether we think we could make the release date. And if we can't, try to call out a new date.
Right, and I'll add something to that even, which is, and it would also be nice if we could, when we realize that we have to change the date, A, we communicate it clearly, as Peter was saying, and B, we try to come up with the new date and not kind of be in a continually pushing it back kind of state. Which again, just helps with trying to manage expectations for downstream people. With 17, there were a lot of people asking almost continually, is 17 ready yet? Is 17 ready yet? When's 17 going to be out?
When I look at 17, I'm not sure what a 2-week commitment, what difference a 2-week commitment would have made. We were chasing the particular set of issues we were chasing, and they needed to be resolved before shipping. So
yeah, I'm not 100% sure it would have helped with 17 either. 17 is obviously an outlier release, right? So there, and I think the recognition here is that, there are always going to be releases that are going to be late. You can't always meet dates all the time. However, if we have made a statement around when we expect releases to happen as a regular course, then it may help us be a little bit more aggressive about pushing other things out of a release if they're not necessarily needed, in order to kind of minimize the things that are blocking us to getting out the door. And the fewer things that we've got, obviously we've got a bug that we can't diagnose and we can't figure out what the problem is, then it's hard to predict how long that's going to take. But the fewer things that we keep in the list between now and shipping the release, the presumably more easy it is, at least, to predict when that's going to be. So, and I think the other recognition was that, hey, yes, 17 was an outlier release, and for the most part, all of our releases have been within that 2-week window. So maybe we can just write that down, and then 17, we still have to figure out how to deal with that kind of a release. But we can make this kind of statement for our stakeholders so they know what to expect, and we won't see these kinds of questions quite as much, maybe. Does that make sense?
So you're talking about documenting or making a statement of the processes that we're already taking, and recognizing that we will be
Yes, and I think there's a little bit more of the. There's
sorry,
also
Mark, I wasn't finished yet.
Okay.
And redeclaring our release dates if we're not going to make it. I'm not sure how that's going to be different in practice from what we've been doing, and even from what we had ended up with on 17.
And it may not, although I don't know. Again, this isn't aimed at solving 17 necessarily, but kind of around having the project document what the expectations are. So 17 may have motivated us to ask this question around, defining this thing so that we can point people at what the policy is. I don't think we have even a de facto policy around how we're going to extend releases. So that's one aspect of it too, is trying to put a little bit more definition around what that looks like.
So, because we're talking with two hats here, when we talk about a 2-week delay, that from an OpenJ9 perspective is a 2-week delay to tag the final release candidates, right?
Yep.
And so there would be further delays potentially.
Yep. Yes. This is only an OpenJ9 discussion. It's just that for some of the points I have to wear two hats to talk to them. But this is purely this is the OpenJ9 community call, so this is the OpenJ9 community discussing this, whether the OpenJ9 community will take this on or not. But as a downstream consumer, I guess I'm expressing, wearing my non-OpenJ9 hat, I'm expressing that it would be helpful if OpenJ9 could be a little bit more well defined in how it approaches this part of the release process, its release process.
Anybody want to chime in on this?
I think the idea would be to give, instead of slipping day by day, we want to try to make a better decision about how much more time we need to be ready. So we're not saying, maybe next week. Right. Up front, we say, okay, there's going to be a 2-month delay or a 3-month delay. And it doesn't mean we can't ship earlier, but we say we want 3 more months, and we try to ship within those 3 months.
I don't have a problem with us documenting, what our typical maximum lag is, and even being clear on we want more time. Though when you give time frames like 2 to 3 more months to ship something, I kind of gulp a little bit. But
well, that's what it was for 17, right? How long was it? It was from September. So October, November, it was pretty close to 3 months.
Almost 3 months, yeah.
Yeah. I'm not debating that that's how long it took, but it does make me gulp a little bit when we start tossing those kinds of delays.
But I'm not saying it has to be 3 months. What we're saying is maybe we should book a separate call and have a discussion and look through all the issues for 18 and say, how much time do we need? When can we ship this thing?
Update stakeholder expectations for when we're going to be able to ship it, release it.
Yeah,
So it's almost like a release prep call that we need, or a discussion at least. It doesn't have to be a call necessarily.
And we don't have to do it now, but maybe beginning of February, we look at where we're at and try to figure out if we can ship 18 on time, or how many months do we need to say we need to think we can ship.
certainly seems like a worthwhile approach to try to bring down that date, make sure that we're shipping as close to on time as possible.
Yes, that's always the goal. Hopefully we can ship 18 on the same day. But if it turns out that's not possible, it's to give a heads up, that, hey, we need 2 more months.
Yeah,
And
none of this is about trying to increase the gap or give people flexibility to push the gap later. It's just about trying to document what we think the maximums are. And I think the community as a whole should continue to try to release as soon as possible after OpenJDK releases. That would certainly be my message.
Maybe 17 was a special case, right? Because we're doing the OpenJDK method handle work, and 18 is not going to be a problem. We'll be able to ship it on time. But at the moment, it looks like there's a lot of issues for 18 to take down, and there might be an issue with that.
So Peter or Mark, can one of you draft a initial set of information on that our typical maximum lag and our process for addressing this extra release meeting to set the communication around that, and we can fine tune that as we add it into, I guess, the release process to start trying that out and see where it goes.
Yep.
All right. Us will produce it.
Anyone else want to chime in on this? I know Pete and Mark and I have been having this conversation, but
as a general comment, it doesn't just have to be leads discussing these things. The committers and anyone in the set of committers has a full right to participate in these kinds of conversations and express their opinions. That's kind of what the Eclipse project's set up, right?
I just want to say, so in regards to the 17 release, at one point we actually did believe that we were, a few weeks away. In hindsight, it was definitely incorrect, but I'm saying this just to highlight that predicting how long things will take is very hard, and historically, we're never perfect at this. So, I think what I'm hearing is that we want to be more conservative now, and err on the side of caution when we're looking at release dates. So I think this will help. I still think that there is a possibility that we might still slip because as I said, it's hard to predict how long things take. But I do think this is a positive change.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I think this is just trying to put a little bit more. I know it's a bad word, but process in place to try to reduce the frequency that we do unpredictable things. That's all. I think everyone understands. I hope everyone understands that outlier things still do happen, but we can try to be a little bit more conservative, as you say, when needed to try to help people understand what it is we're doing and when we think things are going to come out. And I think that's a good thing. Thanks for your comment, Toby.
sounds like we're coming to the end of that discussion. There's nothing else on our agenda other than to pick the date for the next one of these calls. I've tentatively set January the 4th. Do people think that we'll be ready to have one of these on the 4th, or is it worth pushing the next one out even a week later than that?
Fourth might be too soon to when most people are coming back from vacation, so I'm not sure how much there will be to update then. The 11th is a better date.
right, that works for me. We'll schedule the next one of these for the 11th. All right, if there's no other comments, then thank you everybody, and enjoy your holidays and your Christmas break. We'll meet again on the 11th.
Holidays, everyone. Happy New Year.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Happy holidays.
Thanks.